the consciousness started to bubble up with like what we eat. But now the next level is like the medicine. You know what I mean? Like if we care about consuming organic food, we should care about or consuming organic herbal medicine, right? So I think that's where we're heading towards, and the awareness is growing like exponentially every year. And then, the other big thing I say is that herbalism is the gateway drug to activism.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
All right, hey everyone, welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Susan Leopold. Susan is the executive director of the United Plant Savers, along with one of the main organizers for the International Herb Symposium. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you. It's been a long time coming. I feel like you should have been one of our first episodes, but here we are. We finally made it happen, and I'm stoked to specifically talk about the International Herb Symposium. I say this about every herbalism event, but it truly is one of my favorite events. It's coming up. So let's definitely talk about that later on. But for now, I would like to get to know Susan a little bit better and kind of like what brought you to the healing world of plants.
Oh gosh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And I mean, I definitely think like as a child, I was always drawn to plants. And I was fortunate to grow up, where my parents lived on a farm, and we lived in a house that had a huge wooded area with a pond. And there was just a lot of, capacity to explore nature. And so I think I kind of, as far as I can remember back, just being really drawn to plants. And I do think that I told this story a long time ago about how I was in middle school and I came up with this, it was like the science fair. And so my project that I came up with all on my own was I grew carrot tops. One was in a carrot top by itself in a bowl of water, and then 2 carrot tops further apart in a bowl of water, and then a bunch of carrot tops together. And my whole theory was that plants need people. That plants need each other just like people need each other.
That's so sweet. I love hearing that. So
I was always drawing these parallels between, when you're a middle school student, you're seeing how people are really creating these social structures, right? So I was drawing these parallels to prove that plants need structure as well. And in my theory, the cluster and growing carrot tops, it was just in water, right? So I removed all the external factors. It was literally just carrot tops, and those that were in a cluster grew exponentially, more so than the lone carrot by itself that grew the least. And then in the middle were the 2 carrots that were in the dish together. So I think I was always just having these thoughts, and the same science teacher asked me to go pick flowers in my yard, and my favorite plants that were growing in my yard, I had this huge population of pink lady slippers, and I picked those plants and pressed them and made a little book, and I was so proud of it. And then I go in and my science teacher is like, Mr. Henshorn, oh my God, you shouldn't pick those plants. And then I was just like, why wouldn't you pick the plant? So it's just the wheels started turning. But I also had very severe asthma and respiratory issues. And so, really garlic and ginger and greens, these things became so critical in my life because I was trying to get off of taking antibiotics all the time, taking prednisone all the time. So I found a lot of relief in plant medicine. I wouldn't say that I've never been quite drawn to the herbalist path. I consider myself more of an ethnobotanist, and it was just kind of serendipitous that I fell into the role of United Plant Savers because a lot of people were really encouraging me to apply. I certainly knew about United Plant Savers when it was originally started. And actually Kat Meyer and I held one of the first fundraisers for United Plant Savers at my farm. And so very early on, Rosemary, Richard Lieberman, the first executive director, Paul Strauss, the Botany Boys from Ohio. I kind of knew all these people because I did a weekend long fundraiser that Kat and I put together about a year or two after UPS was founded. But really my passion was, those relationships between people and plants. And I kind of, it was different back then, right? Like you only found out about something because you actually like wrote in that you wanted to be on a mailing list. It was like a different way things worked back then. And so, but long journey, but come full circle. And UPS had been looking for a new executive director, and a lot of people had encouraged me to apply. And so I think I bring a different perspective because a lot of the people involved in UPS and a lot of the founders of UPS were heavily rooted in the world of herbalism. And I was coming more so from a perspective of ethnobotany and deeper into like these relationships that define plants and trade, that define how we use common space, how we manage landscapes, what is our impact on the landscape from a human perspective. So I think in that regard, my perspective on the mission of UPS is like so much broader than herbalism, though I see herbalism as like, a piece of the pie in the whole context of things. So I hope that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, I want to kind of ask about your relationship with Rosemary Gladstar, but before I do that, I have to know, did science ever prove anything related to your carrot top theory?
I mean, funny enough, like I made it to the state science fair. Like I won a lot of
really?
I won a lot of ribbons.
That's awesome.
People really found it interesting. So obviously I was taking more of a perspective of, coming up with a theory based on like observations of human relationships. But I do think, gosh, there's not much difference between plants and people. And you could draw all kinds of conclusions. And if anybody's listening, I encourage you to try the carrot top experiment yourself. But now, looking into all of this, right? I mean, I think we all have very like just intuitive understanding of how the world works if we just allow ourselves to kind of sink into that. But certainly you could imagine like now we're discovering so much more, right? I mean, Suzanne Simard's work with mycorrhizal relationships, how plants communicate, these interconnected ideas are now like really gaining some momentum, and that's kind of a research topic that I've done a lot of research on is parasitic medicinal plants. I did a fellowship at the Lloyd Library. And so, parasitic plants can be found in any ecosystem around the world. There's all types of ways that plants are parasitic. So really, those characteristics in my mind are just an expression of the interconnectedness, right? We can just understand it a little bit more because it's more magnified, but really, and I think parasitic has kind of a negative connotation, but it just exemplifies how deeply interwoven we all are.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm very curious what your when you first met Rosemary Gladstar, and then I believe she was the executive director of United Plant Savers before, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious about like when you first met her, how you developed that relationship, and then the transition of her being the executive director to you becoming
okay, sorry.
That's all good.
Can you hear the mowing? I'm sorry. Of course.
Oh, yeah. No, I can't hear that, but yeah, I had some neighbors earlier mowing, and I was getting a little worried about that as well. Actually, a lot of my neighbors around here do no mow day, which is kind of cool. They're no mow month, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, cool. No, that's all good. So I'm just curious, like, how it was when you first initially met Rosemary Gladstar, and then the transition of her from becoming the executive director to you becoming the executive director for United Plant Savers?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Obviously, it's like core to the passion of Rosemary, United Plant Savers. And she was like the founding president, so to speak, but she was never the executive director.
Ah, okay.
So Richard Lieberman was the first executive director of United Plant Savers. He's an ND. He lives in Hawaii. And then Linda Lamole, who played a significant role in traditional medicinals. So that's how Rosemary and Linda knew each other. Okay. And then I took on the role as executive director. And I will say that Rosemary has a really unique approach to being a part of things and then allowing them to like flourish. And we could name many of those things, like herbs, like traditional medicinals, and like United Plant Savers. So when I first took on the role of United Plant Savers, she did come to some of the board meetings. I would say the first 2 years or so. Sarah Katz was the board president when I took on the role of executive director. And Rosemary very much felt like it was important for her to step back and allow the organization to grow on its own. So though she's still and always will be founding president, she is not an active board member, but she is obviously like has her finger on the pulse and
to say the least,
is always makes herself available for feedback and for advice and all those types of things. But I think that's a beautiful gift if you can be passionate about something and be there as the flame to kind of ignite it, and then to be able to step back and then allow something to flourish sustainably on its own without your hands in it, so to speak. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, I want to say Rosemary Gladstar has been involved in at least 2 of the organizations that I've worked for, say Mountain Rose Herbs. She started Mountain Rose Herbs. And then also, I want to say, if I'm getting it correct, she started the Brighton Bush Herbal Conference, which I actually organized for 1 year. So yeah, it's just, she started so many things. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, did she start Herb Rally too? And I'm like, no, I think that was me, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I did want to say, I pre-call, I was telling you that we have some guest questions. And I actually emailed Rosemary and I asked her if she would like to ask you any questions. So here's a couple questions from Rosemary. I'll just read them to you. By the way, Rosemary says she's a big fan of yours. So Susan, when it comes to plant and environmental conservation, you're one of the most passionate, driven, and focused individuals that I know. What fuels you? What keeps you going?
Oh gosh, I wish I knew. I wish I could like fill myself up, Yeah, I think, it may sound, kind of crazy, but yeah, I feel like plants communicate through me, and I feel incredibly driven to be an advocate and speak for them. And when I think I can't do any more, when I lose my mojo, it's like I can't get away from it. So I really feel strongly that plants are our ancestors, and that they really are the yin to our yang, so to speak. And I just, yeah, I feel incredibly driven to speak for them. And so, yeah. and I think I just, as far as I can remember, I think I've just been born with that passion from the get-go, I don't know how else, to describe it. Everything that's kind of happened, I ended up, going to the Amazon in 1994 and, kind of had like a real aha moment of, how in peril plants are in North America, and that, it wasn't really my mission to like save the Amazon, right? Like my mission was really to go home and like understand what was happening and be an advocate from that perspective. And it was kind of, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't say tragic, but it wasn't kind of the outcome. It wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But I had to listen. So, and then I came back and, there was nowhere to take botany. There was nowhere to study native plants. I did that through the community college because that was where the local botanist Miriam Lobstein taught. I joined the Native Plant Society with people who were all much older than me, it was different back then. So it's kind of exciting to see the interest in and plants kind of have a resurgence, whether, of course, what I was witnessing back then was really the beginning of the organic movement, when the USDA like took on organic certification. I mean, that was huge. I mean, there was like events around the country with thousands of people speaking out what they thought about the USDA organic. And so that's what I kind of, tell people often, is that I really think that, like what, like the consciousness, like started to bubble up with like what we eat. But now the next level is like the medicine, you know what I mean? Like if we care about consuming organic food, we should care about or consuming organic herbal medicine or whatever medicine we're going to take. Right. So I think that's where, we're heading towards, and the awareness is growing like exponentially every year. And then, the other big thing I say is that herbalism is the gateway drug to activism. So that for me is like, okay, you're like, oh my God, I'm learning how to make my own herbal tea. And then you're like, wait a minute, wow, what are these plants that are in my tea? And where does this plant come from? And oh my God, what do you mean a plant is at risk? What's that mean to be a botanical sanctuary? What's that mean to not mow my lawn? What's that mean to see weeds differently? What's that mean to understand what an oak tree is in my yard and what it supports? So it's like this, it's the gateway.
It just builds on it. It just keeps
builds,
building.
It just builds. And yeah, so I can tell someone's herbal savvy by like how much are they protecting the environment? Have they gotten that far in those questions? Has it led them to that? Or are they just at like I'm gonna, be crazy about making herbal tea? It's like, it just keeps, it really is like a portal of endless like learning. It never ends, right? And you learn this plant, and then you realize it's part of this family, and then this family plants all over the world, and I can travel and see the different variations of mugwort. It grows everywhere. It's just like these aha moments, right? And you learn something, and then it just starts appearing. So what is that? Like who's controlling who? You know what I mean? Like you think you got it all figured out, but you don't even know that like the plants are like at work behind the scenes, like navigating stuff that's just like next level, right?
Kind of reminds me of my relationships with my cats. I'm like,
yeah.
But you said so herbalism is the gateway to activism. I love that. This wasn't one of Rosemary's questions, but I'm curious. You do work very hard. I'm curious how you deal with, say, like burnout or like replenish your stores and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I no doubt about it. I go through major burnout.
Yeah.
And I can just that's it. I'm putting in my 2 years.
Yeah. Totally.
No, for real. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like everybody, it's just part of it. But for sure, I guess when I get to those really dark places, I can, go out into the woods and like see something I've never saw before. And then I'm just like right back in it, So I don't have any secret sauce, but I will say, I'm a huge fan of Paul Strauss's ginseng, ginger, 3 fungi. It's like my ultimate favorite go-to. I travel with it all the time. And I'm definitely like a super big bath person. So I like, steam, sauna, bath. I'm all about the hydrotherapy. And I can just like fill the bathtub up, soak in it, and then just let it all go out the drain. And then I can start fresh. So, I mean, I wish I did yoga more. I mean, I'm like a certified yoga teacher and I've done all that. And like, I want to do that more, but man, it's so hard. I just wake up with 1,000 things and I'm just in it, And so, in retirement, I'm going to take up yoga again. But until now, I think stick to the coffee.
I get it. Well, I don't know if you know this, but we were living in an RV for the past 4 months. We just got home, and that taking a bath was Amanda's first thing that she did. She attempted to take a bath in the RV, but the bathtub was like this big. So she was just like scrunched up. It was very awkward looking and pretty hilarious. But yeah, I can't agree more. After you're done taking a bath, it really does kind of just feel like you just had a day off. So that's a good way. I did want to get to Rosemary's other question. She asked 2. Again, it's kind of a 2-parter. So Susan, what do you think is the most important role that United Plant Savers plays in plant conservation? Is there 1 or 2 projects that UPS is involved in that you're most excited about?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I really feel like in the bigger picture, because it's such a huge, we're a small organization with a really big mission. So I do really feel like probably the most important thing we do is we act as this vessel for people who are passionate about plant conservation. And in that capacity, we support people to become botanical sanctuaries. I feel like, that in this time of maybe feeling helpless, that plants can really, we can all feel empowered by plants. I mean, whether it's like a windowsill garden or whether it's like not mowing your lawn, it's very empowering. And people who set up their botanical sanctuaries and write these stories about why they're doing their sanctuary, what they call their sanctuary, what do they do? These are the things so our journal, I feel like every year it's just so packed with incredible information of these stories, right? It's got some academic stuff in it, but it's really holistic. Anybody can submit something. It's really a reflection of our membership. And one thing that we've done, we have so many projects and, so many great things that we're doing, especially at the sanctuary. But during the pandemic, we really expanded our capacity to host deep ecology art fellows. And so that's something we offer up. People, if they apply and they're selected, they can come stay at the sanctuary for 2 weeks and explore their connection with medicinal plants in their environment. And so that holding that space and what people are creating and what they're experiencing and what they're sharing about, I think is, incredibly inspiring. I think art kind of helps us go beyond being able to express what's happening in a verbal way. So that's pretty great. And then I would say, one thing I'm incredibly excited about is the launch of the Duke Ethnobotanical Archives. So we inherited Jim Duke's library and all of his notes and research and photography and Peggy's art. And from there, we got John Staba's collection. He's was a professor of pharmacology. And then after that, right before Stephen Buhner died, he donated his library. And so we're really building this, what I call like the Lloyd Library of the East.
Wow.
And that kind of ties in with the international, and like my vision for the future is really building the International Herb Symposium Learning Center and really making people aware of the archives. Last year, we did a fundraiser. We purchased this brick house in downtown Pomeroy, which is just down the road from the sanctuary. And we are able to host people to come and research. And, another aspect to this whole history thing, I mean, one, we have like the history of, herbalism that we've been all able to witness, that Rosemary was, a big part of igniting, and the International Herb Symposium is a huge part of that history. But step back into the world of the eclectics, C.S. Rafinesque, John Uri Lloyd, all these characters that really define, like the history of American herbalism is really rooted in conservation. It's really rooted in a holistic approach. And I think a lot of people who are getting into herbalism, they're reading stuff on the internet, they're Googling, they're, reading books, but a lot of that stuff is really regurgitated information that goes back to certainly Native American knowledge, and also, this unbelievable history of the eclectics. And so that is something that I feel like is also incredibly important, is to really dive into that history and for people to understand how this knowledge, how we have all this current knowledge about medicinal plants. And so that is something that I'm incredibly excited about. And we're really looking at, though we have been doing a lot of seed collection with the prairie that we have at the sanctuary, we're really looking into the future to start a medicinal plant seed bank, which, hard to believe, doesn't really exist. There's some really exciting things on the horizon, and we really depend on the membership to make all this stuff happen. So it's really critical that, everybody gives a little bit, but then it like creates an opportunity for us to do really big things.
Yeah, if you're listening, a dear listener, I highly encourage you to check out the Botanical Sanctuary in Ohio. I was there for the 25th anniversary, and that was a super incredible event. I don't suspect you all have events like that every single year, but would you recommend people just go and visit and hang out there? Or
it's open all the time. Anybody can go there, and there's a little kiosk that has information on hiking and information on the plants you'll see. And so at times we have the yurt available for rent. You can book the brick house on Airbnb. You can pay a small fee and camp. So really, we encourage people to come visit anytime. And then we also have the art fellowship and the medicinal plant certificate program, which is a 4-week internship in the summer. So there's, tremendous amount of opportunities, and we'll be doing a forest farming cultivation 2-day workshop the last weekend in September. So, though who knows when we'll do an event like we did on the 25th. I mean, interestingly enough, next year will be UPS's 30th. So
it's already here.
So who knows? We might put something together.
Oh, come on. Let's do something. Let's party.
But it was really great, right? The 25th was like a fantastic event, and
it was so fun. It was so fun. What an amazing event. There was music, there were stories, also I want to say Doug Elliott taught me how to eat a pawpaw there.
And Stephen Foster gave an incredible tribute to Jim Duke. That was like phenomenal. And so it's, I know people will say, oh, I want to do this. Maybe I'll do it. I can't do it now, but I'll do it. There's no guarantee.
Yeah.
that there's going to be another. These things, you can't just take these things for granted. There will never be a 25th. That event happened. Stephen Foster's gone.
Yeah.
That
was the only time I met him as well, was at that event. So that was pretty amazing. I really enjoyed he did like a photo slideshow and stuff like that. That was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so these carpe diem.
That's right. That's right. Well, you heard it here. If you want to go do something, now's the time. I did want to say we have some people in the audience, so that's pretty sweet. Thanks for joining us, Lydia, Maria, and Sherry. If you do have a question, you can leave it in the chat or the Q&A section, and then maybe we can get to some of those at the end here. So those were the two questions from Rosemary Gladstar. I did promise you we're going to promote the International Herb Symposium. And before we really delve into what's going on at that event, I would love to hear how did UPS end up taking over the International Herb Symposium? Because I know previously, again, here we are, Rosemary Gladstar, I believe, started it, and then I want to say it passed it along to the Zach Woods Herb Farm folks, and then now it's a United Plant Savers event, both a fundraiser as well as, I want to say, it's organized by you and probably your team as well. So I would love to hear about that transition, and then let's talk about the event itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rosemary started the International Herb Symposium, and it was where UPS was founded, in a dorm room at Wheaton College with a bunch of people talking about their concern for plants in trade, especially native medicinal plants. I mean, at that time, people were like super hip on golden seal being like the be all plant to pass a drug test. And it just, these like things, like lady slipper was still being used. You could buy it in the health food store for sleep aid. And so people were concerned, and that's where UPS was started. And most, definitely, Mel and Jeff had helped Rosemary run the IHS for many, many years, and had, bought equity into the organization. And they really decided that it wasn't really sustainable for them. They wanted to focus on the farm, and that, in the end, they really didn't want to continue to run the International Herb Symposium. But they wanted it to continue on. And so they approached the board of directors of United Plant Savers. Melanie is a past board member. And, this idea that UPS would actually purchase the International Herb Symposium and then bring it under the umbrella of United Plant Savers. So the board agreed to do that. And we did the International Herb Symposium online in 2021. And now we're back in person for 2023.
Super exciting. So that's coming up. I should have the dates in front of me. I know it's this June though. June 9th through the 11th, I believe. And that's in Wheaton College and just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Norton.
So do you want to tell us more about the event? Maybe like if there's keynote speakers or some of the presenters or some of the things you're excited about?
Oh my gosh, I'm excited about so much. Really, I really wanted to highlight, I really wanted this to focus on the plants, right? So we have kind of like, keynote species, so to speak.
Oh, cool.
And those two species are white sage and wild rice. And so we hope to be giving away seeds and just getting people like talking about those two plants. We're going to be viewing some of the last year we did the first International Herb Symposium film festival, and Saging the World won the Rosemary Gladstar Award. So we'll be showing that film. And then Food That Grows on Water was a runner-up, and we'll be showing that film among many others that were a part of that film festival. So that's kind of a cool thing. Friday night, Mark Plotkin is going to be giving the keynote. So I'm really excited about that. He'll be sharing about all his research and all the work he does in South America. And then Rosemary is going to be the keynote Saturday night, talking about the history of the International Herb Symposium. And one thing that's kind of, one thing that I think Mark and I talked about that he's going to touch on is really about the the herbal legacy of New England, right? I mean, especially with Harvard University and Richard Evans Schultes, who was like, kind of a key ethnobotanist, who was a, mentor to, people like Wade Davis and Mark Plotkin and a whole host, Michael Ballack, a whole host of, incredible ethnobotanists who are doing, phenomenal work around the world. And, just right down the road from Wheaton is the Oaks Ames home, right? Oaks was a famous botanist who wrote and studied orchids from around the world, and his wife illustrated those orchids, and she was incredibly dynamic in the suffrage movement. And then a little tidbit, I don't know if you know much about the glass flowers at Harvard.
I've been there. Yeah.
Which is like mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The same mother and daughter that commissioned the Leopold family, no relation.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's who crafted the glass flowers. Also were instrumental in ensuring that Serpent Mound was protected in Ohio. And if you don't know much about Serpent Mound, it's, one of the most significant Native American mounds. It's not far from the sanctuary in Ohio. And many of these mounds were plowed under in the 1800s. And so, so my point is that there's all these like links, right?
Yeah.
That connect one person to another, and everybody who's at the IHS or everybody who is a part of the IHS, those are just more links in the chain, and so really, really emphasizing how we're all a part of this incredible botanical legacy, which may seem, kind of daunting. Maybe someone who's like on this path feels alone or feels like, why do I value this when nobody else values it? But really, the more we connect, the more we realize that we aren't the only people out there that value. And
I probably say this every episode, but I just got goosebumps.
So that's what it's about. I mean, I'm more excited about, people just coming together, and finding your plant people and like feeling inspired to go out in the world and advocate for plants. And, so that's what I think is most incredible. We have, obviously a little bit difficult to like bring people from around the world like there has in the past, but, Rocio is going to be there. And there's a wonderful man, Saad, who grows roses from the Indus Valley. And he'll be bringing roses and talking about the legacy of like his family and all the families generationally that have been growing roses. So I'm super excited about that. We'll be having somebody come from India who will be talking about all the work to protect plants of the Western Ghats region. So we definitely have some people coming from Jonathan Sparrow Miller will be coming from Ecuador. So we have, people traveling really far to.
It's still an international event.
It's still an international event, not to mention just the diversity of teachers and all the different cultural backgrounds that each of them bring. So I mean, there's just, there's some, there's just so many amazing people, and it could be the last time to really see these teachers, in person, because, I mean, things, things happen. Right. And, but of course I'm a huge fan of Matthew Wood, so I'm so happy he's going to be there in person. Lots of classes on, medicinal mushrooms, and all capacities. I mean, there's just a little bit of everything, right? How to propagate and grow plants. And the one thing that makes Wheaton so unique is it has an incredible forest and lots of big trees. And so we've asked the maintenance people to not mow the lawn, so we have weeds growing, and at every session there's like at least 2 plant walks. So, this is really like your opportunity, not just to sit in a classroom or be on a Zoom call, like if you come to the IHS, you have to get out and at least you'll probably do 2 herb walks before it's over, Mark Williams is going to do his thing where he picks a leaf of every plant and creates this huge living herbarium, and we'll try and identify as many plants on the campus as possible. We'll also be doing Trad Cotter is going to be there, and we're going to have like total fungi ID table happening all weekend. So this is really, you can't, of course we have an online version and it's great to offer that. And we're always excited to meet people where we can meet them. But if you're on the fence, like definitely come in person, and you can do a day ticket. You can just come for a day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, plug in if you can, because there's no guarantees, I think the thing that's been really difficult this go around is that, it happened 4 years ago, and, there's inflation, food prices have gone up, wheaton's prices have gone up, traveling, I get it. So it's, it is really difficult to sustain cost wise, an in-person conference. So I don't know what the future of IHS is going to look like. I definitely will be putting it out there at the IHS that we want people's feedback. We want to hear, like, what are the classes people want to hear about? What are the things people want to learn about? And how can we be of service, with the future of IHS, and that's, yet to be written.
Well, I know you graciously invited me, and we're still on the fence. That we're probably like a 99% no, unfortunately. But I will say, just to kind of agree with what you're saying, I will say, check out the teacher lineup. I want to say you could go to internationalherbsymposium.com and if I'm getting that correctly, and check out the teacher lineup, because if anything was able to convince me to go, it really is the teacher lineup. It's quite incredible. I'm like, oh, they're going to be there. Oh, they're going to be there. Oh, they're going to be there. And our good buddy Steven Yeager's teaching there. So that's super fun. It's going to be an amazing event. It would be great to go, but I'm not sure it's going to work out this time. I have been twice and I can attest it's an amazing event. Are you all still going to do like the kava ceremony, or is that kind of a thing of the past?
No, we're embracing there will be the kava.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's worth going for as well. So,
and we're bringing back the herbal, product contest, and
nice.
We're having a plant wave lounge where we're going to have like plants hooked up to sound waves, and people can, tap into listening to the music that plants make. We're going to have the Cannabis Museum from Ohio come up, and
nice.
the founder of the Cannabis Museum is going to give a talk on cannabis and early pharmacies, right? Because it was like a huge staple of everyday pharmacies if we were just to kind of step back in time. So there's elements to this that I hope people really embrace. So I don't know, last minute, you might find yourself there. You don't know.
That'd be lovely. Well, very good. I know we got started a little bit late, but it's been about 50 minutes. You want to answer a few more questions?
Yes.
Wait, all right. You got the time? Sweet. This is a kind of like an audience submitted question, not from today's episode, but it's kind of a general Ask an Herbalist question. I thought you would be a great person to ask, see if you have any insights on it, but it's, what does the herbal industry need the most right now besides more herbalists? Yeah.
Well, I mean, definitely we need more growers.
Okay. Good answer.
Yeah. And, the more that we can supply herbs regionally, the better. I mean, I'm a big fan of bioregional herbalism. Usually like the plants in our environment are the plants that are going to serve us better. But most of the plants that go into all the herbal products come from out of the country. So supply chain and, just the overwhelmingness of plants traveling from India and Asia and, all these kind of things. There's a great opportunity for people to get into growing more plants. So that's seed saving, and and growers. That's
Mhm.
what we need.
That's a great answer. I've asked that numerous times now, and you're the first person to say that. It seems actually like the answer. I wasn't gonna originally ask you this, but I'm curious. We just moved to a really old house in Appleton, Wisconsin, and our yard is zero point 0.1 acres. Are we able to become a United Plant Savers botanical
Yeah,
sanctuary?
anybody can be. We have a lot of urban gardens, where people are just growing herbs in container boxes.
Totally.
It's only the intention to be a plant saver that qualifies you as a botanical sanctuary. So, yeah.
It's a great conversation starter with your neighbors too, because if you get that cute little sign, you put in your yard, and
Yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean. So yeah, all right, we're gonna do it. You heard it
Yeah.
here first.
Okay.
Audience, hold me accountable. We're gonna do it. Sweet. Just yeah, we could kind of do like rapid fire if you want, or go in depth however you want. But what is one of your current favorite herbal allies, or what plant are you looking forward to seeing blooming soon and hanging out with?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's so tough because well, for sure, just in this moment, right? It's just been fantastic to see the trilliums blooming everywhere. And if you look on my Instagram, I drove through West Virginia. On my way back, I travel a lot from Ohio to Virginia, and I'm always finding new places. And I was up in the Monongahela, and the forest was like just covered with trilliums, and so interesting to see the different color variations within the same species. And then I was seeing carpets of pedicularis canadensis, and that like also from like purpley white to like orangey yellow. I mean, just like the color variation. So I guess, as far as like what's blooming, I grow a lot of elderberry, so I always get excited when it's time to start harvesting the elderflowers. I love to make hydrosol with the elderflowers. It's just something that so gentle, so powerful. So whether it's, spritzing it on your face or putting it in your throat, it's a great one. And then of course, then the berries come, right? So but yeah, so many plant allies. And like I said with the lady slipper, I did a huge rescue a couple of years ago, and we rescued about 7 song was there, but we rescued a bunch of yellow lady slipper, and so I love it when that yellow lady slipper blooms, just to know that like it was transplanted and it survived and it's still thriving. And so yeah.
I love trilliums, and I'm yet to see trillium out here in Wisconsin, but we certainly have a trillium ovatum in Oregon, which is where I'm originally from. And I want to say one of my teachers, it might have been Grady Proctor, said that because the trillium ovatum will sometimes turn like pink. And I want to say that he said that they believe that that's from getting pollinated. So they're like white and then they kind of turn pinkish. And I don't know if you know about that or not, or anything like that, but I've always been curious. So, but yeah, absolutely love seeing that flower come up. This is a fun question. I kind of want to start asking people, what are some of your hobbies besides working with plants?
That's a great question. I mean, I was, I really love tree climbing, and I did a big trip to Indonesia and climbed some trees that were 200-300 feet tall. Wrote a great article in the journal about it. So I love tree climbing, and I guess I'm a pretty big bibliophile. So I love collecting books. I worked for Mrs. Mel in the Oak Spring Garden Library, so I love rare books, the history of books, binding, printing. And lately I've just been obsessing over Etadofa, which was the book written by John Uri Lloyd. It recently, I mean, I've read it, but it's recently become a book on tape, so when I'm driving.
Oh, cool.
So I can listen, I don't know. I could just listen to that book over and over and over again.
That's so
So,
cool.
so yeah, so books and sometimes it's just so hard. I'm on the computer all the time. And so my ability to like read as much is like diminishing. So I'm in the car a lot and so I love just like listening to books on tapes. And then probably the next biggest part of my life is the Grateful Dead. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
I'm a diehard Deadhead and a super big Fish fan.
Yeah.
And just music in general. I mean, just the whole, like a lot of the history of the Grateful Dead is like tied to, the music of Appalachia. And, Jerry back in the day went through Cumberland and all these places, and he started off a banjo picker, and, Yorma is like Fur Peace Ranch is just right down the road from United Plant Savers. And so when I'm I'm a junkie for life. Circles Around the Sun is pretty much my my most like favorite current band. And so I could go. I just saw the Kitchen Dwellers. They're definitely awesome. But yeah, so I guess I'm just a Jerry girl.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that two of your activities involve plants, climbing trees and listening to books about plants. Fun fact, when I first started the Herb Rally podcast, one of my ideas was to narrate some of like, say, John Uri Lloyd's books, because I believe they're public domain. And I thought that'd be super cool. And I never knew that was an audiobook, but
it just became one. The guy just did it in 2023.
Oh, so someone beat me to
you
it.
Can do it. You can, yeah. You should have done it, Mason.
Yeah, maybe I'll still do it. Yeah.
No, but you could. He wrote so many books.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I could just do a different one.
You just do a different one.
Yeah, I've narrated one of his monographs. I want to say the Damiana monograph, but
that
that
all the monographs. Forget about it. How awesome would that be?
Yeah, well, all right.
Okay,
I'm gonna get on that too then.
Yeah, I mean, the book we just published, and you can get it for free as a download on United website, is the Forest Farmer's Handbook. Okay. And in the handbook, I quote this, whole piece from John Uri Lloyd, who was like, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he was like, if we're passionate enough to save like the buffalo, and these other iconic species, why can't we be just as passionate to save the golden seal? Amen. I mean, everything he did was just so profound. So we republished, we got permission from the Lloyd Library to republish his own collection of gathering work on golden seal growers in the 1900s. So there's a little piece of Lloyd, and I'm just dropping it all over. So yeah, what a legacy, and not just him, but the whole like community of those that surrounded John Uri Lloyd, and gosh, so many nuggets.
Yeah.
So yeah, I encourage you to do that.
I will. I'm going to. Yeah. You just reminded me. I was like, oh shit, that's right. That was one of my ideas to do that. All right. Well, shifting gears, we only have a couple more questions. I did want to ask you about your Grateful Dead, fandom. And my favorite song is not even a Grateful Dead song. It's a Jerry Garcia band song, and it's called "Don't Let Go." Do you know that one? Me and Steven will like get together and we'll belt it out, and it's super fun. I'm just curious if you, just for funsies, if you have like a favorite song or one of your favorites.
Eyes of the World.
Eyes of the World. All right, cool. I'll check that out. I am not a Deadhead. I appreciate it, and I Steven's enthusiasm is infectious, and I definitely enjoy it. But that Don't Let Go is my jam. So I'll check out Eyes of the World for sure. So a couple more questions. One is from our mutual friend Jennifer Garrity. Who is she's with Herb Farm, at least last I checked. So I'm going to play a video question for you, and I'm going to see if I could even figure this out. We're going to do a screen share here. Actually, do you mind? We got an audience question. I'll save Jennifer's question for last.
Okay.
Cool. So Sherry asks, I am a member of UPS and Herb Rally. Thank you. and got a root of golden seal last spring. I was so excited when it came up. Sorry, let me start. I was so excited when it came up this spring, growing under my giant magnolia tree. I want to grow more. How do I get more to expand in an area where it seems to happily grow?
That's a great question. One really cool thing you can do is you can actually dig up in the fall your golden seal root, and you can snip the root hairs and replant them, and those root hairs will become new plants. So golden seal really is a plant that is easy to propagate. You can also, if your golden seal produces fruit, when it turns red, you can harvest those fruits and literally just replant them right back underground, and those will also create new plants. But it's pretty neat. You can take those root hairs and you can plant them in like a potting tray if you want. And then you can leave that outside so it goes through natural dormancy, and you'll see the buds form on those root hairs. Or just, cut the root hairs, replant them right where you're growing golden seal, and you'll see it create new plants. I mean, you can also break the root as well, but I think just as good, leave that mother root and trim those hairs and replant them. Golden seal loves to be propagated. It loves human plant interaction. So you really can't go wrong, and you can always add compost. Golden seal is a big feeder and it loves compost, so that will increase the growth of your golden seal as well. So great question.
You're an expert. It's so good to know that the person at the helm of United Plant Savers is able to answer something like that. So I love it. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, thanks for the question, Sherry. And just for, if you're listening and you're not an Herb Rally Schoolhouse member, shameless plug here. We're starting to allow Schoolhouse members to join live on the podcast and, potentially interact with the guests and whatnot. So thanks for joining us today. I know it was a bit last minute, but so Maria Christodoulou asks, can I create a UPS botanical sanctuary in Greece? Looks like they're only in the US.
Yes, you can. So we have the Sacred Seeds Sanctuary network. And if you go on there, you can see there's probably about 30 sanctuaries from around the world. Yeah, so the Sacred Seeds is free, right? Yeah. Because it's international and dealing with international money and all that. So you basically just fill out the form and we add you to the website, and you can connect with other sanctuaries that are out of the country. We do offer a waiver to people who apply for the botanical sanctuary, but it's like $150 or something. And that covers really just the cost of the shipping on the signage.
Cool. Final question before we learn about where to find more about Susan and your work. But Jennifer Garrity, our mutual friend, asked,
if you were elected president, what's the first thing you would do in office?
President of the United States?
Yeah.
I would put a moratorium on cutting trees. Yeah, hands down.
Is this a conversation you and her have had?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
So it's just so funny. I was really, but that's so interesting. But absolutely. And I would do a lot of things. I would definitely put a moratorium on any tree cutting. I would invest in non-timber forest products, but also other plant materials that you could use for tree-free paper. Like we have native canaf that grows in the Southwest. You can make paper out of it. Obviously, we can make paper out of hemp. There's no reason why trees should be paper. And the other thing is I would ban if you couldn't cut trees, then you couldn't make cardboard, right? Cardboard is made from hardwood. Hardwood trees are taken down to make cardboard. We don't need cardboard anymore. So these are like some fundamental things. I would make the head of the USDA have to be elected, not a presidential appointment, because the USDA is controlled by corporate greed. And people pay to get those positions. They need to be elected. So yeah, if I was made president, I have a whole list. I won't go into it, but yes. So funny.
Susan for president. shocking that it's plant-centric answer. It was funny. We were at a Mother's Day gathering yesterday at Amanda's parents' house, and they gave us some like hot dog buns. And on the way home, Amanda's like, I wonder if we could turn these hot dog buns into paper. I was like, save the trees. Let's figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, we can do so many things with plants. It's endless, right? And I love all the new technology. I mean, algae is being used for all kinds of plastic alternatives. I mean, there's just,
Cannabis, right?
Cannabis. Yeah. These polymers from, plants like cannabis can be, turned into plastic alternatives. Absolutely. So yeah, gosh, wouldn't I? Oh, you could see me in the Oval Office right now. I just on that presidential decree. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, even, even in England or other places where trees are so rare, right? Like you have to go through a ton of permitting processes to even cut down a tree.
Yeah.
And so they've gotten to that point, and we should learn from that. I mean, it's not an abundant resource. And so our forestry and logging practices have to change, and plants and water and all these things, they need a voice at the table, right? I mean, same in Greece. Yeah, Maria. Hi, Maria. She's going to
Maria.
be international. She's going to be talking about,
Greek herbalism, likely.
Greek herbalism, absolutely. So we're super excited, and she's got a great trip coming up. And that's certainly part. I mean, obviously we could just go on and on, but there's so many herbal legacies to the International Herb Symposium. And one of them is certainly Juliet, and I mean, when you look back at the people who've come to the International Herb Symposium that are no longer with us, Tasha Tudor, I mean, all kinds of just like iconic, amazing people that, Rosemary brought into the fold to bring to a broader audience. And so, gosh, there's just so much history there. And that's kind of the vision of the International Herb Symposium virtual learning platform, is to really bring all this under one umbrella so that people can hear some of these older classes and see newer classes and learn from people from herbal traditions around the world. So anyways.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that. You mentioned the recordings. Is that still available for people? Do you want to expound upon that? Because that is like a nice perk for people that register.
Yeah, so basically, the teachers were given the option to pre-record classes. So we have around, I don't know, almost 40 pre-recorded classes that will be on a platform for up to 1 year for people who signed up for the full symposium, get all that as just a bonus. And then we will be recording classes at the symposium itself. We'll be recording the keynotes. We'll be recording the talk from the Cannabis Museum and in a handful of folks. But you could imagine, 14 classes happening in every session. We're not going to be able to capture it all. So things that we are able to capture will be loaded up to the platform. And then we hope to kind of repackage a lot of the classes and audio tapes that we have from past conferences and make that available in some capacity. I don't know exactly how that's going to look like, but we're going to try and do something that's just incredibly affordable. So the more people that kind of tap into it, the more we can build this library and make it available.
Love that. Well, that's a perfect segue for the final question, which is, where would you like to send folks, United Plant Savers International Herb Symposium and whatnot?
Yes, absolutely. Internationalherbsymposium.com to sign up. Like I said, there's all kinds of ways you can sign up. You can sign up for just the day. You can, sign up to just come to the event, or you can add the food, or you can add the lodging. But I will suggest, if you do want to stay there, that, the number of rooms is dwindling pretty quickly. So, sign up. And, and like I said, you can just come for the day, and you can just, very critical. The online program is $150, very affordable. After June 1st, it's going to be $250. Okay. So big incentive to, sign up and get your online ticket or in-person or day ticket as soon as possible.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for taking over an hour with us. Your time is very valuable, and we really appreciate you answering all of our questions. And it was a lot of fun getting to know you a little bit better. So thanks for joining us on the Herbalist Hour.
Yeah, and thanks to all the participants who signed on. Very nice to meet y'all.
Yeah, well, I know at least
say hi to me. Come up, say hi to me at the IHS.
Exactly. A couple of them will be at the International Herb Symposium. So hopefully we can make it as well. But yeah, internationalherbsymposium.com. Please go get your tickets. You're supporting a great nonprofit organization in United Plant Savers, and it's just going to be a ton of fun. Herbalism events is where I really got my start, and it's just it's the best way to interact with a bunch of other plant nerds.
I feel like that's where we first met.
Oh, it's very actually, yes, you're 100% correct on that.
Yeah, you and Aaron, remember?
Yeah, probably 2012, I would guess, something, or maybe 2014, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. Yeah, it's where a lot of relationships are made, and yeah, it's a beautiful campus, beautiful event. So thanks again, Susan, for taking the time, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.